The 3 worst weeks of my life. 2 months ago, I called up my boss, threatening to quit. I finally closed 2 out of 3 transactions that ruined 2 vacations, and I had a long trip to Belize planned, and there was no way I was taking my laptop or working. Within minutes of him talking me off the ledge, I got 6 referrals within minutes. If you stay to the end of this podcast, I guarantee you a laugh. I'm going to tell you about my worst days and weeks of my life. But time plus tragedy equals humor. Welcome to Retirement Solutions for All Ages. Is working worth it? These unwanted referrals reminded me of the hardest work day ever back in 2003. I had the best job in the world. I was a fairy godmother, turning girls into princesses and boys into pirates. When my dog was dying, I'd be crying until I stepped through the doors of a birthday party, and then we had 90 minutes of pure joy. Life is full of ups and downs. As Walt Disney said, you can't have a hero without a villain. That was a hard spell, pun intended. But my dog was old, and everything else in my life seemed to be perfect. A far more difficult day, I had 5 parties in one day. The first one at 10 a.m., and the last one was a bachelorette party at 9 p.m. My morning started before sunrise. I woke up with a bad feeling. I snuck downstairs and waited for the morning paper to go thunk on the doorstep. When it did, I opened it and checked when sunrise was. That's how we did things 20 years ago. At 5:43 a.m., I called the hospital and asked how my mother-in-law was doing. We were just about to call you. You need to come say goodbye. You see, the way fortune tellers work is by using centuries of intuition and statistical observations. One is called the letting go hour. I didn't want the phone ringing, waking my hubby. I gently woke him and let him know it's time. We picked up his dad and drove to the hospital to pull the plug. I felt horrible, but eventually I had to leave them to go to work. My work motto was, you never cancel a child's party. Again, it's so nice to turn off the negative in the brain for some pure joy. I've worked with over 10,000 sugar hopped up kids, and another motto of mine was, if a child wasn't happy, you don't have to pay. I also believe it's my party and I'll cry if I want to. The middle party of that day was difficult. The birthday girl was bossy and irritating. I thought, I'm not charging for this one. I'm not my best self today. I'm going to fast forward this story and let you know I got 6 referrals from that party. At one of them, months later, I was doing great and thought, it wasn't me. It was that birthday girl. I had to let her know that it wasn't her party this time, and today's birthday girl deserves attention. The moral of the story? This too shall pass. Don't let a bad moment ruin your future. These were moments, single events. The problem arises in what the aviation industry refers to as the accident chain of events. In safety and accident analysis, studied by the National Transportation Safety Bureau, disasters are rarely caused by a single failure. There are stages. The initial link, a minor oversight, mechanical glitch, or distraction occurs. Skip checklist item or minor fuel contamination. Two, secondary compounding factors. A secondary error or environmental stressor builds on the first, such as poor weather or misinterpreting an instrument. Three, the critical turning point, the final human or mechanical failure that turns a manageable situation into an emergency. Four, the interruption. Safety is restored only if a pilot or crew actively breaks the chain by taking corrective action, such as a go around or diversion. So, a bad day is just a bad day. But when things compound into a bad week or month, things can turn critical. I'll start with my most recent, one of the worst weeks of my life. It was April 2026. I've been working with a client for 2 years. She was on an extremely tight budget and was one of the most difficult loan files. She had variable income and multiple jobs, which meant every time she changed jobs or had a drop in hours or interest rates went up, I needed to requalify her. She went under contract and then canceled because inspected showed major defects. She made another offer on a different house. Over the weekend, the bombing in Iran started and interest rates shot up. I called her agent and suggested she withdraw the offer until I can requalify her. The offer had already been accepted, and now the buyer had money on the line. I was pulling rabbits out of the hat to get this one to go through. I got the approval, and she panicked and canceled the appraisal. Then she wanted it back. Then she took a loan to somebody else for a really bad deal. I can deal with all of this when life is normal, but I had a chain of events. She was my sunk fallacy cost. I invested money and hours into her and wasn't even going to recoup my investment. She wasn't my only long-term difficult client. The other client had dementia and was going through foreclosure, and the closing had been delayed because her son kept burying his head in the sand. When my first client said she was overwhelmed, I replied, I am too. I had to put our dog down today. My husband is having shoulder surgery in the morning, and his dermatologist thinks his skin cancer is back. The good news is that it gave me content for podcast episodes. My husband's biopsy came back clean and his surgery went well. What I wouldn't have given to host a 5-year-old's princess party that week, though. I was more than happy to let her go as a client. My previous, one of the worst weeks of my life, I didn't want to let go of any of those clients. I had 5 transactions going, and everyone looked great for all of them. Then Hurricane Ian hit Marco Island to Fort Myers, Florida. We were without power, water, and cell phones. My sweet little old widow's apartment flooded and was full of mold. Luckily, we were under contract for a home that didn't get damaged. Other client contracts needed new inspections for damage, and there were other difficulties. This delay overlapped with a long awaited trip to Greece with my mom, brother, sister, and other family members. On the connecting flight to get to Greece, I answered my messages and found out that all five transactions had blown up. In addition to the work issues, was survivor's guilt because my other sister and brother, who weren't planned to go on this trip, had massive damage on their homes and they were going through personal tragedies of their own. My one sister had just finished chemotherapy for ovarian cancer, and my brother had lost his teenage son to complications of COVID. Also, on that connection, my sister sent a video of their flight sitting on the runway on fire. Could things get any worse? Time for a little injection of humor. My mom, ever the optimist, oh, we get to ride the slide. Turns out they hadn't gotten on the flight yet and would be a day late. We arrived in Athens, checked into the hotel, and met my brother at a bar. I couldn't get internet to answer all my urgent messages, so I said I was walking back to the hotel so that I could put out fires. I'm a female alone walking at 1 a.m. in a big city in a foreign country. I'm sorry, that's just not smart. I called up my boss and threatened to quit. Yeah, he wouldn't let me. So, turns out the little old widow did not get her home. All the other transactions fell apart too. It still haunts me today, but that wasn't the worst week of my life. The worst week of my life. My husband had to have surgery for skin cancer. They took out a football-sized piece of skin on his back and several lymph nodes. I had no idea how awful skin cancer could be. But the timing could not have been worse. He was diagnosed, and immediately after, the airline he worked for announced massive layoffs. So, because he has cancer, he cannot even apply for new jobs, and he's losing his. So, I have to rely on my income. I was doing children's dress-up parties. I had 19 Cinderellas and costume characters throughout the country. I had grown Washington, D.C. into a larger market than my Chicago original flagship market. It was set up so beautifully that I no longer had to fly to DC to host or train any of the party hostesses or Cinderellas or do any of the activity. I knew, and my motto, as I said earlier, was you never cancel a child's party. So I knew I had to have backups. So for every party I booked, I had two hostesses scheduled. Most of them were college students. And as finals and spring break got closer, I started getting phone calls and emails saying, Ruth, I'm sorry, I can't work that week. One after another, they're all canceling on me. and I have multiple parties scheduled in Chicago, and I don't have as many people to back up the parties that I have here. I'm already stressed out about my husband's health and our financial future, and I have to start making phone calls. And in one day, after over 10 years of being in business, I had to cancel 25 birthday parties. I was devastated, and these moms are screaming at me. Luckily, there was one woman that really felt sorry for me and helped me and comforted me. But this is also happening in the spring in Chicago. And this huge storm comes rolling through Chicago. And we have lightning strikes and power outages and floods. And our basement flooded. Turns out our carpeting in our basement was made of formaldehyde. And I was allergic to the fumes. And I'm trying to sop up the water and tear up the carpeting. And the next thing you know, all of my hostesses in Washington, D.C. have to send back their costumes to me because that was it. I was closing DC down. I couldn't live with starting from scratch out there. And I didn't have the mental bandwidth with dealing with my husband to continue the Washington, D.C. branch. So I had everyone send back their treasure chests full of costumes. Well, we had all the costumes sitting on the basement floor, and I had an oscillating fan to dry off the carpeting. Things can't get worse, can they? Well, just then, our waste stack explodes a leak, and through the waste stack is a hole that is spewing sewage into the oscillating fan, covering hundreds of costumes. The shit really hit the fan. So if you're trying to decide whether it's time to quit your job and retire for good, these are some stories that might give you a little perspective. Is it time to quit, or do you continue on? I hope this episode meant something to you and you got a chuckle or two out of it. If there are others that could benefit from this episode, please send it to them and hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes. Because I haven't quit yet, at least not permanently, but I am going on vacation again and I'm not taking my laptop. So enjoy retirement solutions for all ages. Send it to your friends and family and look forward to seeing you next time.